is no fear for this team.
Has this city ever been more excited?
I got some family in Detroit. They so happy right now that the way the team looks.
And this is the best team that they have had in well over 25, close to 30 years. It's real.
Nobody saw the Detroit Lions coming last year. We thought they would be good, but not that good. So, coming off of their best season in recent memory, will they be able to duplicate that success? With a team that is primed to make a Super Bowl run right now, a combination of veteran and young talent, plus the experience they gained from last year's playoff run, this team is ready to make that next step. There are a few hurdles in their way, but in today's video, we will talk about how they are in position to make this run this season. But before we get into that, make sure that you guys like, comment, and also subscribe to the channel. And with that, let's get into this video. Last year, the Detroit Lions had a fantastic season, especially given the fact that just 3 years prior, they finished the season 3-13, then they improved to 9-8, and eventually to 12-5. You can see the progression in the organization with this consistent improvement. The 12 wins tied the most in franchise history, and they almost had 13. Many believe they should have won their matchup against the Cowboys last year. For those that don't remember, the controversy began when they made an attempt to make a lineman eligible. The refs claimed they weren't notified, which led to a penalty. Detroit was penalized for an ineligible player downfield and illegal touching after referee Brad Allen announced offensive tackle Dan Skipper as eligible instead of Lions' preferred offensive lineman Taylor Decker, who caught what initially appeared to be the game-winning two-point conversion toss.
You think Brad Allen made the right call in this position?
He absolutely missed it. Stop blaming the players. This is a huge mistake.
Later on, the Lions would go for 2 again and would fail to convert. The Cowboys would win 19-20. Despite that, though, this was a great season for the city of Detroit. They would win their wild card game against the Rams 23-24 and then proceed to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the divisional round 23-31. But controversy would strike them once again during their playoff game against the 49ers, a game that the Lions could have taken over. They had a lead at one point, 24-10, and instead of taking a field goal, they went for it on 4th down. Jared Goff threw what was a catchable ball, but it was dropped. Hard catch, but the result is still the same. Turnover on down. It could have been a 27-10 lead. So should they have kicked it? Yes. But the players also have to play, and the Lions have been successful in these situations all year. So overall, it really was just an unlucky and bad day for the Lions, because not kicking that field goal and eventually another field goal was not the only reason why the Lions lost this game, because you had the opportunity to get the ball right back, but then you had the pop up that should have been a pick. Jamyr Gibbs fumbled. Dan Campbell, here we go again, goes for it on 4th down and decides not to take the points. Now, hindsight is 2020. Those calls do not look good because they did not work. But I don't think we can deny the impact Dan Campbell has had on the organization overall. He has brought a mentality to this organization that very few coaches are capable of doing. The team as a whole plays hard for him, and the results are undeniable. Is he a risky head coach in the grand scheme of things? Yes. And can that be to his detriment at times? Yes. But is he the right guy for Detroit? I believe so. And I believe he can take them to a place they have never been before. And yes, that's a Super Bowl. The second piece of this equation, though, is Jared Goff, who has completely rejuvenated his career. More on him a little bit later. I want to talk about the pieces around him as well as the defense that should be even better this year. First, let's talk about the weapons. Wide receiver Amon St. Brown, who just signed a 4-year contract extension worth $120 million, including $16.5 million at signing, $77 million guaranteed. He had 1,515 yards last year with 10 touchdowns, a dynamic wide receiver who is only in his 3rd year. After being selected in the 4th round, and as good as he is, I think he has another gear in him. A lot of people did not see this coming when it came to his production, but the Detroit Lions have been hitting and hitting on their draft picks over the last few years over and over again. But there is one guy in particular that they had high hopes for who has not necessarily been able to live up to the hype, and that's not necessarily due to the fact that he hasn't been good. He just has not been available, and that's Jameson Williams, who I believe will have a breakout season this year. Coming out of Alabama, he was one of the most hyped guys in terms of wide receivers in his draft class, and I believe he has the talent. As long as he can stay on the field, I believe this will be the year that he finally has that year of a first-round caliber wide receiver. The type of season that fans have been hoping for, and I'm rooting for him as an Alabama fan. But let's not forget about the young talent Sam Laporta, who burst onto the scene last year, had 889 yards and 10 touchdowns. Nobody saw this production coming, and that's why I say the Lions have been hitting and hitting on their draft picks every single year, it feels like. The Lions are one of the few teams that have been developing these skilled guys the way that other teams simply cannot. And I think the tight end position is a position that a lot of people devalue, but it's one of the most important positions, especially when it comes to building a Super Bowl winning team. Look at Tom Brady. Who did he have? Gronk. Look at Patrick Mahomes. Who does he have? Travis Kelce. And I'm not saying that the tight end position is the most important position ever, but when you have a very good tight end, it makes things so much easier for your quarterback and the offense in general. They drafted another guy from Alabama in Jamyr Gibbs, who started the season out kind of slow as the Lions were trying to figure out what's the best way to use him. He's quick, he can catch the ball out the backfield, and I believe he will get even better this season. And the bruiser of that running back duo, David Montgomery, is still there, so we will get to see this dynamic, which I believe worked very, very well last year, continue to grow and improve. But we gotta talk about the big guys up front, because without them, I don't believe any of this is possible. Led by right tackle Penei Sewell, the Detroit Lions had the number one rated offensive line last year according to Pro Football Focus. Penei Sewell also signed a 4-year, $112 million extension that included $85 million guaranteed. And this is another position I think a lot of people who watch sports forget about. It's not flashy, but it is one of the most important things that you must have in order to succeed, because without the O-line being good, your quarterback does not have time to throw the ball. The running back will not have time to let holes develop in order for him to get from point A to point B. It's a lot of things that can go wrong if your offensive line cannot hold those guys back in the trenches. And the Lions will not have to worry about that because they have Penei Sewell. You have a Taylor Decker there. You have a Ragnow there. And you added Kevin Zeitler there from the Ravens, and so this offensive line still should be and will be pretty good, if not the best offensive line in football. However, the defensive end is where more concern may come from when it comes to the Lions. Now, last year, the Lions were not bad on that side of the ball by any means. They were just okay. Led by Aidan Hutchinson, they had the 15th ranked defense last year. Last year, Hutchinson had 11.5 sacks, and I believe he's going to get even better. A lot of the key pieces for the Lions are very young. Hutchinson began his career in 2022, so he is another guy that I believe will get even better as he has shown improvement from year to year. They added DJ Reader to that D-line, a guy that potentially helps lessen the load on a guy like a Lil McNeil. Offenses will now have to account for more people on that defensive line. And on the back end, they traded for Carlton Davis, a cornerback from the Buccaneers, as well as added Terran Arnold in the draft. He led all SEC cornerbacks in interceptions and pass breakups in 2023 and led the conference in Pro Football Focus run defense grade. And I have seen him come up and not be afraid to make tackles. In this particular draft, you can see a clear focus on the defensive end for the Detroit Lions in hopes to solidify the cornerback positions, and then you also have Brian Branch covering up the back end. And to add to that point, I think their second round selection in is Rayshaw Jr., a corner from Missouri, has a chance to contribute to this cornerback group as well if he doesn't just flat out start. Because when I tell you the guys over there in Missouri were balling last year on the defensive side of the ball, they were balling, and I believe the Lions have found yet another gem in the draft, but we shall see. Overall though, these defense could potentially see some improvement this season, but more important than all of that is the progression and the consistency of the quarterback position Yes, Jared Goff, a guy who just got paid a 4-year, $212 million extension with $170 million guaranteed. He had 4,575 passing yards last year, which ranked second only behind Tua, 30 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. A very, very, very good season if you ask me. And if I had to pick a guy I'm rooting for who isn't on my team, it would be Goff. Traded by the Rams after they didn't see him being good enough to take them where they wanted to go. Then they go and win a Super Bowl. And it would be amazing to see a guy like that go on to take the team that he was traded to the Super Bowl and win it. A lot of people at that time lost all belief in Jared Goff when the trade went down, but we see what has happened over time. Jared Goff has improved year to year, and it just puts him on the list of guys who needed another situation in order to take their games to another level. And it also shows that sometimes the organization and the players' timeline simply is not matching up. The Rams wanted to win right now. Jared Goff needed a little bit more development before he can really reach his peak. So if Jared Goff can take his game to another level this year, a lot of great things are going to happen for the Detroit Lions. And this is a Detroit team that has been through so many ups and downs, from having all-time greats like Megatron and Barry Sanders to being the first team to have an 0-16 season in 2008. I say all of that to say this: if any team, if any fan base, if any city is ready for a breakthrough, it's Detroit.